Jimmy, it looks like we have Ricky on the phone right now.
Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest on the Experience this week. He's a tag team legend. He's a wrestling legend. As a matter of fact, besides being an old friend of mine for 30-something odd years, his name has entered the wrestling lexicon. Whenever somebody is praising the selling of a wrestler, they say, in the locker rooms at least around the wrestling industry, he was selling like Ricky Morton. And we have him on the program today, the real one. Ladies and gentlemen, Ricky Morton. Ricky, thank you for doing the show.
Jimmy, I appreciate that. Matter of fact, you said the real one. That's my tweet. The real Ricky Morton. I have to. Everybody done stole my name.
Well, I'm at the Jim Cornette. You're at real Ricky Morton. It seemed like before all of us got involved in Twitter, everybody jumped in and what did they think we were going to buy these fucking names? Like we were going to buy our own names?
No kidding, man. I mean, what can you say on that one, Jimbo?
Well,
how's things going today, my friend?
We are good, and I just saw you. I mentioned earlier in the program we were doing the Open, that we were in Decatur, Tennessee over the weekend and raised a bunch of money for the Meigs County High School football program and had a great time doing it. It's classic old-fashioned wrestling, the way God intended it, not this. What do you think? Before we go into some of your background, and we want to ask you some questions that maybe you don't get asked every day because I've known you for so many decades. I can do that. But what do you think about some of the newer trends in wrestling, such as we were talking about the Lucha Underground show where one of the girls is 138 years old and the monster heel actually eats people, not sexually, but he actually eats them because he's a monster, and they kill characters off and have them die on the show. And not to mention the Young Bucks super kicking 8-year-olds for their birthday, or the man versus woman matches where they wrestle equally, or the idiot out in California that does power spots with his dick. Does it hurt your heart as bad as it hurts mine to see shit like that go on in the wrestling business these days?
Jimmy, and it's, I'm sitting there trying to answer that question. Man, that's a good one. But, when I grew up in this business, and the wrestling, the way we kayfabe and the way we took care of our business until, the kayfabe sheets come along, then the internet came along, then everything else come along. It don't surprise me a bit. Sometimes at some of these independent shows, I'm waiting for him to shoot Hugo out of a cannon. I don't know. And then he's going to kick out on one. I'm going to tell you that right off the bat. But, no, nothing surprises me anymore. The only thing that really pisses me really off, is these independent shows that I go to a lot. You got to hide in the back because you're embarrassed to come out. When you see a match in the ring, especially when somebody wants you to watch their match and you're going, holy shit, you got about as much business in the ring as me flying the space shuttle. And, but that's the way they become a stars. The only way they run their shows is they have to book them themselves. But, I get caught in the middle of that a lot of times. Nothing surprises me, Jimmy, about the business anymore. Nothing does.
Well, you talked about your life in wrestling, and it's so popular these days to talk about second-generation wrestlers and carrying on the legacy, and nobody mentions you in that class, and you are a second-generation wrestler. Your father, Paul, in his day, he wrestled, he refereed for years, he hauled rings, he did almost everything in the wrestling business, and he doesn't get any publicity anymore, and you don't get mentioned as a second-generation wrestler. But what was it like growing up in when you were a kid with your dad in the wrestling business? Well,
Jimmy, we depended on wrestling for a living. My dad, and in my younger years, my dad worked for Nick Goulas, and as a matter of fact, my dad, he pulled the ring, and he refereed. Us kids growing up, we had to travel with my dad to go put the ring up, and later on, I had my first match when I was 16 years old, and that was a long time ago. Then after that, I really, because I grew up in the wrestling business, when I got older, I didn't want to be in the wrestling business. But then it just so happens that I came in it because I was around, and the business has changed. I watched the business change over 40 years that you cannot even imagine. But being a second generation, you talk about not mentioned. I don't think I mentioned in many conversations anyway. I found out in the world everybody appreciates it when you're honest, but then when you are honest with them, you're an asshole. So that's where I come into the business at. I was one of the few guys, and you know me very well. I will speak my mind. I don't give a shit who you are, and that way, I guess that's the reason I'm not in a lot of people's conversations. So thank you very much for the compliment of saying about selling in the dressing room. And I got to say this right here. I heard a conversation, with Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels. And I remember Steve Austin, he was asked, he said, man, you being one of the best baby faces, best selling. And Shawn Michaels goes, no, I wasn't. Ricky Morton was. Now that's a compliment in the business to me. You hear me?
Well, you were, and I saw you from the time, of course, you had, like you said, you had some matches as a teenager, and then you got away from the business for a while, went to school, did other things, but then you came back after that, and that was when I really got started seeing you in the Memphis territory, and you were a natural, even though, and you've never been, Hercules. You've never been 275 pounds, but you were even smaller then. But your work was so good and so crisp, and the way you sold was so realistic. From the expression on your face to the body language to the bumps that you would take. You could take 3 bumps off of one of Jerry Lawler's punches, and it looked right. And your work was just so natural that you got underdog sympathy from the beginning, and you've always looked so much younger than you are. Not to say you're old, but you look younger. You got those. You got those genetics. You always look younger, and so you got that underdog to teeny bopper idol baby face sympathy. And it translated pretty quickly. They moved you up the cards because the people got behind you. It wasn't a situation where, he's Paul's son, so we're going to use him. It was, wow, we've got this new young kid that the people are getting into, and you could always rally them, and just the fire you had. Who were, when you were a kid traveling with Paul or watching wrestling on TV, watching Nick and Roy's territory, who were the guys that you liked and wanted to emulate? And maybe, because we all stole some stuff from, I told Lawler one time, I said, I made more money with some of your lines than you have. Who did you emulate, steal from, look up to, whatever, when you were a kid in the wrestling business?
Well, you know what? And I met a lot of good time wrestlers, and you were talking about, of course, in my days, man, it was the Fabulous Fargos, Lynn Rossi, Tojo, Don and Al Green, a lot of them. But one of my favorite ones, and the one that I did steal from, the one I accomplished, the most underrated wrestler there ever was in this business, Ken Lucas. And, I learned so much from him about how to be a baby face, about teaching me. And I don't know if you know this or not, Jim. When I first started down in that territory, you always got browbeated. Even though my dad was the referee, you hear things from promoters, oh, you're too small, you're never going to make it in this business. You heard that thousands of times, and then I met Ken Lucas. And then Ken Lucas put a whole different, thing in my life to show me about, selling, how you sell and get the match over. And it's even when we came to Rock and Roll Express and you met all these other guys, it wasn't about, we'd meet, okay, what kind of high spots you want to do? And I could tell them, dude, I don't do high spots. I sell, and I give Robert a hot tag. Well, it was the same way with Ken Lucas. I sold and gave Ken Lucas a hot tag. Yeah. But over those years, and learning with him and being in promotions, we went to San Antonio, Texas, and I got away out of the Memphis area and working with the different people, and I seen how it worked. Just selling, what selling means in a match, and that's really what got me over in Japan when I went over there for FMW and Terry Funk. Terry said, come here, Ricky, let's do like we do at home. Let me get the good heat on you there, because they never seen nobody sell in Japan. God almighty. And we started doing that, and I got over. As a matter of fact, I tell you how over I got. They put me with Hayabusa, bless his heart, the Japanese star that just died. Yeah. I sold it and gave him a hot tag. And God, it kept me for a job for 2 or 3 years in Japan.
Hey, I know Brian's chomping at the bit, because the one thing he said before the program, he said, I got to ask him about Ken Lucas. Brian, jump in here.
Well, you answered part of my question. I was going to say, when most people hear the name Ricky Morton, the first thing that pops into their head is Rock and Roll Express. But you were a part of two other really memorable tag teams, one with Ken Lucas and the other with Eddie Gilbert. Of course.
And another one, Sonny King too.
Sonny King, and you had the famous Tupelo concession stand brawl in '81 with Eddie Gilbert. You answered the question about Ken Lucas, but what, if anything, did you learn from teaming with Eddie that you were later able to take to the Rock and Roll Express? And do you have any funny memories or stories about your time around Eddie Gilbert?
Oh, with Eddie? At the time me and Eddie were we was both young in the business. Eddie and I learned from each other. At that time, there was no me selling Eddie a hot tag. It was a learning process. And we was out in Oklahoma together. Then we came back to Memphis just for a while. And Eddie, but I got to understand, Eddie had a great mind for the business as he got older. Eddie went into more of the promotion part about it, about booking territories out in Kansas City and working in the office and all that. But man, Eddie was out in Oklahoma, and guys, this is when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie first came out. And Eddie was a freak about scary movies, but Eddie was a spooky guy anyway. And he told me he was going to go see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And at that time, Eddie lived on the other side of the town of where I lived from, but he rented a little cottage out behind a big house. And he lived there by himself. And he would, I'd go over to his place, man. He had windows barricade, doors barricade, like he's on his shit, paranoid. But that was just Eddie. He was just scared to death. So he went to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I couldn't wait. I had a buddy of mine that lived there, had a chainsaw. And when the movie was over, buddy, I'm telling you, I'm hid out back, out behind a bush, and I see Eddie come through the door, and when he goes in, the lights come on, and dude. And by the time I fired that chainsaw up outside that window, and all I could hear was like, and the front door opened up and bang, and I couldn't holler at him to tell him it was me, buddy. He was gone. And but it's one of those situations that you had to be a part of to see about Eddie, man, and then I couldn't catch him, but I got my car, went back home, and he was at my house. Him and Connie were sitting in the living room, and he was going nuts, and I walked through the door, and I didn't even smarten my wife up to what I done. And then I had to tell him, boy, I get a good cussing. He hated me for about 2 or 3 days. But like Dennis and Phil Hickerson.
Dennis and Phil, famous double reverse Tojo rib story. But hey, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. You and Eddie, and I've drawn this comparison before in magazine articles, and we've talked about it. But you and Eddie Gilbert had a hand, and unfortunately, I'm going to put the blame on you, although really it was Jerry Jarrett's fault originally. But you pretty much invented hardcore wrestling, because we've drawn the lineage of the Tupelo concession stand fights. First, it was Lawler and Dundee and Wayne Ferris, Larry Latham, Honky Tonk Man and Moondog Spot back in Tupelo in '79, and when Jarrett needed to get the business up. But then there was another one. Hoot was involved too. Robert Gibson, we call him Hoot, folks. So if we slip and do that, that's who we're talking about. But Ricky and Robert Gibson, Ricky, his brother, were involved in one with the Blonde Bombers the following year. But the best one, actually, for action and for blood and for violence and mayhem, you guys tore the place up, was you and Eddie Gilbert against Masafuchi and Mr. Onita when they were managed by Tojo and they came to the Tennessee territory. And basically, we've drawn the lineage back to when Onita, his knees were shot. He wasn't going to be Baba's junior heavyweight star that he thought he was going to be, and he reinvented himself. And he thought to himself, well, I saw those crazy fuckers in Tennessee doing this crazy blood violence shit, and he pretty much invented hardcore wrestling. And then, of course, Heyman jumped on the bandwagon, and here we go. So it's not really your fault, but you were there for the birth of hardcore wrestling. If Onita had not seen the Tupelo brawls,
I got you. Well, not seen it and been involved in it,
and been involved in it, and took it to Japan, then maybe it wouldn't have happened. But it's not your fault. You've redeemed yourself since then.
Well, and to what, Jimmy, and this is true story too. Randy Savage and I was the first ones to break a table. So,
That's right. The pile driver. Everybody saw the tape of Randy Savage when they finally made up with Jarrett and came in.
Yeah.
It was a rock and roll against Savage and Lanny, and Randy drove you through that oak table at ringside in the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum.
Yeah, you know what? And I made my own angle. See, because it happened, and I laid there, and Randy said, "Come on, you all right? Get up." I said, "No, I ain't getting up." And it's good, and Jarrett worked a little angle off of it, and that was cool. That was the way then. I guess it worked. It worked out really best in all directions. Because I enjoyed working with Lanny and Randy too. Man, they were a great tag team.
Well, and in those days, the guys had the freedom and the ability to call their own shot when something happened that hadn't been planned and you didn't know beforehand was going to take place, and it just came up, like getting pile driven through a table. You could lay there and you could say, no, there's no way that anybody would get up from this. This has to be the finish, or it has to be stopped, or whatever. And then the booker would play on that because it was even better than what he had thought of for a finish.
Oh, yes.
Now guys would get up and say, I saw that. I was telling this story over the weekend somewhere. I saw that fucking little idiot Low Key, they banned him from Ring of Honor because he thought he was Superman and would never do a job, and he wouldn't do. That's why he's unemployed in wrestling now, because he would never put anybody over. But he's 5'4" and 142 pounds. But he at some independent show, and Brian, you may know this better than me. The bell rings. He's against a guy that's twice his size, and the bell rings, and he flies out of the corner with one of those cartwheel martial arts kicks and kicked the guy in the face and knocked him colder than a banker's heart right there in the middle of the ring. Down the guy goes. He's completely unconscious, and the people roared. And instead of covering the guy and pinning him in 3 seconds and getting over like $1 million, he spent the next 3 minutes trying to pick the unconscious guy up and continue the match they had planned.
Well, Jimmy, that's just stupidity and not knowing what the hell he's doing. And you know what? And I'm glad you said that, because I'm going off a whole different subject here. That's why I have a wrestling school. It's a dream of mine. And if anybody's out there listening, go on Facebook, School of Morton. Matter of fact, I just did a dime run through. Check it out on there. It's really cool. But, Jimmy, this is what I do. Some of these guys out here, and I tell them, I said, man, won't you come to my wrestling school? And they look at me like I got a turd on my head. Because everybody thinks they know everything about our business, and they don't know shit. And I'm telling them to come to my school to help them out, to make them better than what they are, because God Almighty, and this is every day. I mean, you talk about this kid, I really don't know him, but I meet people like this every day of my life. Man, they think they know everything, and Jesus Christ, shut up. But you can't, damn.
Well, and we talk about it on the program here all the time. Part of it is the atmosphere there's a lot of people now, as is proved by Lucha Underground, some of the other things, the writers have taken over, and it's not wrestling people booking and telling you what to do and giving you finishes or laying out matches for you. So they're to blame sometimes, because the guys want a job, but they see, it's like, as Rip Rogers says, as seen on TV. They see what people on TV do and think that's always right, and we should do this and more of it. And it's so sometimes it's not the talent's fault, but sometimes it is. But if you since you've got your school now and you've been working with some of these younger guys, we're going to go back to history here in a minute, but if you could tell the guys on the indies now the biggest things, what to do or what not to do, what would either one of them be?
Well, Jimmy, the first thing is, in our day, we wrestled territory, so you wrestled every night. You work with some of the best workers ever in the business. In our day, guys back then were so good. But see, now they don't get to do that. I ask a guy sometimes, how long you been working? 5 years. Okay, but no, that's not what I mean. How many matches you had in 5 years? Because they don't know. We're like, even though we're in the entertainment business, and you check it out, and our business will hurt you. It would kill you if you don't know what you're doing. We're still professional athletes. First thing you need to do is train, learn our business. And you went back to a while ago, how we used to work our own angles. Well, hell, back then we wasn't able to talk to the other wrestlers. You know, you didn't go over move by move. You know, people used to ask me a lot of times, especially about y'all. Well, you and Bobby Eaton are good friends. When y'all, I said, dude, I never seen Bobby Eaton until I got in the ring.
No.
I said, but in our days, man, if I got caught talking to him, I got fired. Dennis,
Because everybody was in separate cars. Because babyface traveled babyface, heels with heels. The locker rooms were separate. There were many times, I remember Eddie Gilbert's classic line was when he would lock up with somebody that he had never met before, and the bell rang, he'd lock up, he'd say, "Hi, I'm Eddie, take my head." You know, because you never met guys sometimes before you wrestled with them. Or if you knew them well, you knew them from the times you would share locker rooms or from working territories, but mostly from in the ring because you couldn't socialize or ride together or whatever. But the matches, the way we put our stuff together, and people have asked me the same thing with the Rock and Roll and the Midnight matches, was somebody would call a spot in the course of a match and it would get over. And we'd say, okay, well, let's do that more often. And sometimes you'd call a spot and it wouldn't work out. And you'd say, well, let's not ever do that again. And over a period of time, from 7, 8, 9, 10 matches a week, month in, month out, different territories, you learned what worked for you and what didn't. And many of the Rock and Roll and Midnight Express matches were basically, you could say 2 words, and that would lead you into this long, complicated spot that people would think, my God, that must have taken them years to go over. No, just did it 5 or 6 times organically and put it all together, and then we just did it again.
Yes, that's right. And the other thing Jimmy was telling me, first of all, everybody needs to learn the basics of our business. You know, a basic match. You ever see these guys do headlock routines or arm drag routines? They don't know what the hell you're talking about. It's either it's like they're on a play pad. Spot number 1, spot number 2. All right, high spot number 3. Oh, that fucked up. Let's do it again.
Let's do the same thing again and do it right in front of the same people. Sure, they fucked up the first time.
And it's unbelievable how things, just learning the basics of our business and learning. And you know, one of those things they do, they don't know the history of our business. Jesus Christ, I asked somebody the other day about Killer Carl Cox. Who the hell's that? And I really wanted to slap him. What are you talking about? You don't know who Killer Carl Cox is.
A lot of times that was shorthand in the ring when you're talking to each other and calling it in the ring. You'd say, let's do the Terry Funk deal. And the other guy would know what you were talking about. And then you'd do 45 seconds of shit based on those 5 words. But I was doing a seminar at a wrestling school for Northeast Wrestling up in Connecticut here about a month ago. And I was saying some of the same things you say to your students. When they're wanting to get a job with a major company, especially WWE, where the money is and everybody wants to go these days, when they go to do their tryouts, instead of doing the quadruple flip and the half gainer and this complicated series and degree of difficulty of 10 and an execution of 5 instead of the other way around, I said, that's not what they're looking for. I said, what they're looking for is, do you know the basics? Can you do the headlock takeovers? Can you grab a headlock without your feet getting in the guy's way so he steps on your toes? Can you do these basic moves and take these basic bumps safely so that not only do you not get injured, but you don't injure anybody else? Because if they're going to make an investment of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in trying to push you, the last thing they want is some dangerous fucker that's doing all this wild ass shit that the people go holy shit over, but that has a very high chance of injuring the guy that they've just spent $3 million getting into that spot. They don't want that. They want to see basics, and they want to see solid work, and they want to see you go through a match with no buzz killers where it's obvious that there's cooperation involved. Now, I know by watching their TV sometimes that does not look that way, but that's what the William Regals and the Scouts go for. And that's, unfortunately, the guys think, well, that Reggie Morton, that Jim Cornette, they just want to slow us down. They're jealous. They didn't do all that shit back in their day, and they're jealous of us. No. We just want you to have as long a career as we've had and possibly get a paying job instead of going and working for popcorn and hot dogs, and don't hurt each other and make it look phony at the same time, because people can tell now more than ever when you're cooperating with somebody.
Oh, yeah, if you're having a good match. And, just learn your time. Basically, Jimmy, a match is just based off timing. And God Almighty, they don't even know timing in a match. That's the same thing going back to the basics. But, changing here, but this other night we were in Decatur, and the chemistry of our business, just with Jimmy Cornette and us being in the house, could you feel it? I call it the magic. I felt that magic in the air already. Right when I walked through the door, and everybody that come over to the table, just Jimmy Cornette's in the building. You know what? And this has been going on for 30-something years, and it's still there. Well, I told Robert, and we didn't have to do what a great match we had. But understand me, Jimmy. I know I'm not.
And bless the Heat Seekers, by the way, the Heat Seekers, the young heel team that Sigmund and Elliott that I managed against you guys. They did a great job, and they were happy to be involved there. But we even had I had my gimmick table on one end of the building, and you had yours on the other end of the building, and we were trash talking each other from across the way.
Oh yes, sure was, and people loved it and doing things, and I know I was 6 pictures to tell you. I know I'm 60 years old. But we still give the people their money's worth when they come to see us, and I love it. That's one thing I like about you. Everything else I hate. But no, I'm just kidding.
Well, you hauled the Hurricane Rana out. I did. I did that. Man, I told you in the ring here. What's this? I just did it. That's great, man. Well, let's go back to your more formative years before you got. Robert had a great tag team background also because he got to break into business when he was 18 years old, teaming with Ricky Gibson, and Ricky Gibson was one of the. And it's a shame that his career really ended right as mainstream career ended, on top career ended right as videotape was coming in, because Ricky Gibson was one of the best, the most exciting, the most athletic baby faces that I have ever seen in a ring. And his matches with Jerry Lawler, when I was first going to the Louisville Gardens, when I was a 12-year-old kid, the suplexes and the drop kicks off the top rope and the stuff that you didn't normally see at that time, but they were young guys, he and Lawler, both trying to prove stuff, but their shit made sense. I'm not saying that they did a bunch of crazy shit. They did a bunch of crazy shit for the time, but it made sense and it looked good. But Ricky was able to bring Robert along, but you had, as you mentioned, a number of really experienced partners. We talked about Ken Lucas, and I know you got the both fists up in the air and the pump up and down and fire up truck driver kind of thing. That was Ken Lucas's boy, and that got the people on their feet. And you and Eddie were able to learn, because Eddie, of course, his father, Tommy Gilbert, was another one of Tommy Gilbert was a funk by a different name. His work was so solid and so believable, and he was a raw bone country boy that could go out there and change hold for hold with anybody. And so he had learned, but you also had a great tag team with of all people, and there couldn't be two more different individuals in the world. You and Sonny King were a tag team in Memphis for a while, and you learned a ton from him.
Well, Jimmy, you got to say this. You know what? I was just thinking, I'm going to say this before I forget about it. And if you go, and two things here, Jimmy. I know you got a lot of pictures. I need a picture of me and Sonny King, and I know you have one somewhere.
You got it. I will bring you.
Would you please find that and bring it to me? But I was thinking about this other day. This funny shit. I was driving home from some town, and when you're by yourself, you think it's a lot of shit. But I never forget this. I'm on Memphis TV, you remember back then, Sonny had that sucker, and he wore a long shirt down to about his knees. And,
yes. Well, it was of African origin. What do they call them, Brian? Tashikis?
Tashiki, yeah, but you got to understand this, Jimmy. I never forget, we get on Memphis TV, and we're out in the ring. And Sonny's got the lollipop down, and then he turns around and his eyes, I looked at his eyes get real funny. And he goes, Ricky, I said, yeah, he says, I forgot to put my tights on. You understand me? And if you find this on Memphis TV, if it's one of the shows, he jumps out of the ring, Lance Russell was commentating, and Lance goes, well, I don't know where Sonny King just went to, right? And he goes to the back, and all of a sudden he goes, well, here comes Sonny King. Sonny ain't got his shirt on, got his blue tie. He's got to put his tights on. And, Sonny, his gimmick hung down around his knees anyway. But I was, man. And God, it was the only time on TV at that age I was almost crying. I was almost crying. I was laughing so hard. But could you imagine if he took his shirt off?
Well, I have a feeling the ratings would have gone up for that 1 week on Channel 5.
Oh, buddy, you're not kidding.
Sonny was like 6'3" and about 250 or 260, and the black Kojak, the African cowboy, and he had some boxing experience, so he had real fast hands. In his final days, was not exactly the most mobile or quickest guy in the ring, but you guys teamed together. You were kind of an odd couple tag team, and then you would sell and give Sonny the tag. Imagine that. But then later on, they switched him heel on you, and you guys had matches, and boy, the sympathy that you got when that big son of a gun was beating on you.
Yeah, but that was a good thing right there, because I don't know if you remember this or not, Jimmy. At least the territory didn't die. That's when Lawler broke his leg and Bill Dundee caught hepatitis.
Yep.
And I was the only one there. Without them bringing another big baby face in to get over, they turned Sonny heel on me. And we had a good little thing going. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we didn't break no records. We didn't advance, no, but the territory didn't die. And as of me being a young baby face at that time, and that's when they come back. And I went out to Oklahoma to experience, to learn more about being a baby face, learn more about our business.
How can I miss you if you don't go away? That's what would happen, no matter how over you were, unless you had ownership. At some point, they would cycle you out if you were a name or a drawing card, so that you'd go to some other territory, pick up a few new things, and then come back, and they'd be happy to see you back again.
Yeah, that's right. Another good story I like to tell you too, man. I forgot about this. And same thing, just driving down the road. Ken Lucas were partners great. And one thing about Kitty, and understand me, I'm a young kid, and I can never catch Kitty messing around. Did you know that? Never could catch it.
No.
He'd always tell me, he says, when I'm talking to the girls, I'll just counsel them. I'm putting their heads back on straight. Right. You know how Kitty used to rib a lot, right? So I never forget, Robert and I were at Selmer, Tennessee, and Ken Lucas, and they had those bleachers back there you could peek through. I could see Ken Lucas over there talking to this girl. I told Robert, I said, "Come here, man, look here. There's Kitty's talking to a girl." And I'm watching their body language and everything. I said, "Hey, he's going to meet her out back. Let's me and you go out there and catch him." You know what I'm saying? Just for the hell of it. And it's just getting dark, but and that was summertime, and all the student buses were out back. So, hell, me and Robert was out back hid before they got around there. So I'm watching Kitty. Kitty looked like a Rambo. He's looking around corners, making sure ain't nobody watching him. And then he gives the gimmick for the girl. And here comes the girl riding. And they went on and Kitty went on the bus first. And the girl come on the bus right after him. And me and Robert and I, we're going to ease up there and catch him, right? So we get about halfway to the bus. All of a sudden, here comes Ken Lucas off that bus, one step. Boom. His old dust fly up. Then here comes the girl on all fours, sliding down the steps of the bus, her face in there, and Kitty's not even about her, and she gets up, takes off running, and all of a sudden here comes a big old dog right on their ass. Row, 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 row. The dog had puppies on the damn bus. And me and Robert, honestly, when you see Robert, me and Robert beat the living piss out of each other. We was laughing so hard in the thing. God, it was funny. Oh, yeah, it's one of those things that you had to be there, but it was funny as hell.
In the Tennessee territory in those days, with baby faces like Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee and Dutch Mantell and the Rock and Roll Express and the Fabulous Ones and Terry Taylor, if Vivid Video had just followed around to all the spot shows, all the high school gyms and the National Guard armories, and just set up a camera in the back parking lot, they would have got footage they could release for the following 20 years. It was.
You can't even understand this. And, there's a lot of stories that you tell, but hell, why tell them? Because ain't nobody going to believe you. And I'm serious. Somebody, that didn't happen. Okay.
Well, now,
whatever.
wait a minute. But I don't want to jump ahead because somebody believed it. And if you want to, everybody knows that Tully Blanchard, when he was living in Charlotte, led a very fast life. And then suddenly turned to religion and was on a lot of those shows, the 700 Club and Christian Broadcasting Network, and your name came up. Would you care?
You know what, Jimmy? You know what? And this is not only one situation. I have some of the worst fucking luck, excuse my language, of anybody in the business. I'm going to tell you, it's just two of them I'm going to tell you that goes on. Now, here I am. I'm with my wife, Connie, my first wife, and it just so happened I'm off on a Tuesday night or something. And my wife is kind of like turning religion, and hey, Tully Blanchard's I seen on commercial. He's going to be on the 700 Club. I said, oh, well, really? So let's watch it tonight. All right. So we go in there at night, and here's Tully Blanchard. He gets on TV. Boy, he's talking about God, which I'm glad for him. But all of a sudden it goes, not the voice, not this guy or not this guy. I remember all the nights me and Ricky Morton, all the cocaine, all the different women. And I'm sitting next to Connie, and I noticed horns growing out of her head. And all I could do, I just did a 4-row right in the middle of the floor, and I just laid in the floor. And that was all. 'Cause, please, why did you say that? And then I had a guy up here. Here's Ricky Morton's name. Gets involved in everything. I had a guy up here that worked for me. He made my DVDs, and sometimes, and I helped him out. He was a cripple boy, however you want to put it. And I'm talking to him, and because I needed to get some tapes, and he says, well, I won't be able to this weekend. I'm going out of town. Well, weekend was over. I still ain't heard from him. I still hadn't heard from him. And all of a sudden, the Predator show comes on TV. Okay, and they got the wrestling dude. I'm well, what the hell is this about? So I'm watching it. The wrestling dude, it come out, it was him. Sitting there on TV, and this guy comes out and catches him, and they ask him all these stupid questions, perverted questions that he done answered. And then they say, what do you call yourself? The wrestling dude. He goes, oh, I work for Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Experience. Oh, no, you don't. No, don't do that. Please. What crazy shit, Jimmy. But all right, what we're going to go to on that one?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, now it's time to get some heat with somebody, because there has been controversy, and since all we do on this show is get heat with people, there's been controversy of who came up with the Rock and Roll Express gimmick. Jimmy Hart swears that it was him that told Lawler, hey, you could put those two guys together and blah, 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 Rock and Roll Express. Lawler, after y'all got great success, often claimed that it was him. Jarrett was around at that time. Who actually came to you and Robert and said, you guys would be a great tag team together? This was March of 1983. As a matter of fact, you and Danny Davis and Ken Wayne, the Galaxians, managed by Jim Cornette. That was your first program. You had an introductory match in the Memphis Coliseum on one week, and then started a program with my guys the next week. So we've been together since the start, even before the Midnight Express. But who was it that came to you guys and said, you and Robert Gibson, great tag team, bandanas, call you the Rock and Roll Express, it'll be great? Who was that?
This is it. This is how this all happened. At the time, I was working in San Antonio, Texas, for the Blanchards. Robert was in Florida. Now, I'm sitting in the dressing room in San Antonio, Texas, and Jerry Lawler come in and sat down beside me. He had a little heat with the Jarrett. I don't know what was going on. That was going to try
That was when Lawler was going to break off and start his own promotion, because Jarrett had not given him half of the company as he promised years before, and Jerry was lining up his own crew to come in. Which that was when they gave notice to my whole stable, Adrian Street, fucking the whole 9 yards.
And Jerry Lawler said, "I want to put you and Robert Gibson together and make a tag team with y'all." It says, we got the finest ones there. And this is exact words he told me. He says, y'all twice better workers than those guys are. So, but they're over because they had the Fargo's names. But Jerry Lawler did. But, but Jimmy Hart had a little bit to do to it with it, too, because he didn't know what to call us. Jimmy Hart, but we was already there. But Lawler's one, our first day to be the Rock and Roll Express, we didn't have a gimmick yet. And Lawler brought some tights with him, long tights. Then if you notice, it was on a Sunday afternoon. They had the flea market out behind the building. And so me, Lawler, and Robert went out to the flea market behind there and bought all kinds of feathers and bandanas and shit. And the tights, and he brought Robert with those tan colored that looked like skin.
Yeah.
And Robert looked naked with them on. Because when you used to wear
and especially
short tights,
for Junior to be encased in light colored tights, that was obvious right there.
Hey,
Robert rivals Sonny King.
Yeah, but you got to understand that when you used to wearing short tights, then all of a sudden you get on long tights. Nothing seems right. I put all that shit on, and we go out. I told Robert, I ain't going out there with this shit on, man. I'm embarrassed to death. But then they played our music, and Robert and I went out that door. And remember, we were with Coco Samoa and who else? I think Toto. And, dude, we tore the house down with them guys. And when we came back, I remember the rest of the fan told me, I didn't know whether y'all were gypsies or Indians. But it got over, man. But Lawler's the one that come and got it. Lawler come all the way to San Antonio, Texas, to talk to me. You know what I'm saying? That was a great honor for me. But see, Jimmy, then we went to Louisiana, and that was a big part of your deal. And when Bill Watts wanted us to come down, and Bill Dundee was the booker, the same thing. Jerry Jarrett telling me that, y'all go down there, but you ain't going to get over. Y'all not going to get over, so y'all come back 6 months. We came back 6 months. I gave my notice right when I walked through the door. I had to come back. You know what I'm saying? Because they signed a 6 month deal.
You lost the loser leave town to us so you could go back and fulfill the commitment. And the people in Houston especially were putting signs up. At every show, there would be signs. 62 days, 44 days till the Rock and Roll Express comes back. It was all summer. It was how long till the Rock and Roll came back. And you were more over when you came back than you were when you left, because they'd had to. And how can I miss you if you won't go away? They'd had to wait for you to see more of it.
Yes, they sure did. And it was a great thing, man. So, we was on our way. We're the only people in the world they carried the Midnight Express or Rock and Roll Express feud all over the world. We went everywhere with it.
Well, a lot of people have asked, were the teams named specifically so they could have that program? And actually, no. Dennis and Norvell and Randy had been to Midnight Express in Alabama, and Watts had asked Dennis, because he was the veteran of between me and Bobby and Dennis. He was the veteran. He was the team captain at first. Said, you got a good name for your team? And Dennis said, how about Midnight Express? And Watts said, yeah, let's go for it. And at the same time, Lawler and Jimmy Hart probably had something to do with it. Had pitched Rock and Roll Express just because there had been a couple of Express teams, but you were not created. We were not created necessarily with the idea of feuding, but once those names happened, as soon as we got to Louisiana, we're working with Mr. Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA. And you guys came in and worked with Nikolai Volkov and Barry Darso, Crusher Khrushchev at the time. And the people, as soon as we got in the ring with two guys who Magnum and 2 were huge baby faces, they were the tag team champions. 2 was a legend. Magnum was one of the top young guys they were grooming. Even if we were working with them, the people would chant rock and roll. The people called the shot. They made them wait for it for a couple of months, but the people were chanting for the match from the very first moment that we both set foot in the territory. And that's why it wasn't a situation where we made a match with a matchmaker and shot an angle and hoped they came. The people wanted the match before we ever even gave it to them.
We sure did. Another thing I want to say is thank the guys, because they knew what was going on. I got to say, Nikolai and Barry Darso got us over to wrestle you guys. You hear me? They got it. They made us, here we are, these 2 young baby faces. When I first went to Louisiana, I felt like Cowboy Lane in the dressing room.
My God.
Everybody in there was 6'9". Here's Artie, 7'4", or whatever he was, and I was in there. But then I went to the ring and worked with Nikolai and Barry Darso, and they got robbing us over so much. That's the same thing that happened in NWA. When we went there, when you had Ivan, Nikita, and Barry, and it did the same thing. And then when we went the program with y'all after that, remember?
Louisiana, especially because Bobby and Dennis felt the same way, because Dennis was the biggest one of the bunch of us. He was 235 pounds and in shape for anything, but you're looking at Butch Reed, and you're looking at Hacksaw Duggan and Ernie Ladd. When Ernie Ladd cracked his fingers, it sounded like rifle shots going off. And we're looking up at everybody. We're going, my God. And that's another reason why not only did you guys get over, because the girls and the female population in the arenas immediately shot up 60%. And, we had a controversy here on the program not long ago, Ricky. I know you'll find this shocking. We had a controversy because I made up a story that a lot of the old days, the audiences were primarily female because the baby faces would go out and fuck the rats. And people just, but you're full of shit. There's no way that could have possibly happened. And I know you'll concur that there's no way that there's any truth to that. But all of a sudden, the girls had guys that were accessible, that didn't look like they'd fucking kill them if they got a hold of them, that were cute and young and they could have sympathy for. And on the other side, with me and Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, the fans, instead of thinking, well, I'm not going to fight Hacksaw Duggan or Hercules Hernandez or Butch Reed or Ernie Ladd, but I can whip those three motherfuckers. That's why we got so much heat, because they knew, and probably were correct in all, instances, they could whip us. So it was a changing of the flavor of the territory, as when Jarrett and Lawler went down to look at Watts' territory. He said, it's down. Well, where's your blowjobs? And Watts said, well, you get some blowjobs on your own time. No. Where's the good-looking guys? You got no girls in the audience. And then here comes you guys and Terry Taylor, and all of a sudden, the girls are out the door. They're fucking lined up a mile down the road. It's that's I don't know why.
You know what, Jimmy, you're talking right there. But I've watched you, for a long time, and and guys out there, people in the fan. When I first met Jimmy Cornette, now he was a photographer outside the ring. He's the only photographer I knew that when he got ready to shoot pictures, he looked like the middle linebacker for the Green Bay Packers. He had knee pads, arm pads. He'd slide up around that ring. Okay, you turn around, get out of my fucking way, man. You boom, boom, and then every now and then you get a fuck you back, and then here we go, and you took the pictures, and then here you become a manager, and then and as Jimmy Cornette being Jimmy Cornette, they get in their heat. And we used to have riots every night. People don't even understand what a riot is when you fight 30 people. We do a finish. Now, I have to sell. I had my eye open. And I literally watched Jimmy get his ass whooped. He got tired of getting his ass whooped. At least he started trying to fight back. And next thing I know, man, it was. But people don't understand that. Yeah, Jimmy, you tried to make a bunch of.
There was one night in Biloxi, Mississippi, and it was simple as they had taken my racket away for whatever reason. It was banned by Mid-South Wrestling, and so I threw my shoe in. And Dennis conked you with a shoe, and you're out, and Robert's selling, and we're trying to leave, and this big corn-fed country farm boy, about 350 pounds, grabbed a hold of Bobby Eaton, and he
Bobby had him in the front face lock. Remember that? Yes. He kept standing up. Bobby go straight up in the air, back down. Okay, go ahead. I remember that.
Bobby's legs were straight up in the air, and then the guy did like the elephant and wiped out like an entire row of ringside chairs with Bobby. And Dennis is knocking people out right and left, and this old guy comes up to me in a hat and a cigar and sticking his hand in. Well, first he had the hat and the cigar, and he takes a swing at me, and I hit him and knocked a cigar out of his mouth and made him mad, and he starts reaching in his pocket. When he reached his pocket, I kicked him in the balls. And then here comes the cops with the sticks, and they get us back, and somewhere or another, I had a big black eye. I didn't even remember getting hit. Dennis had a black eye, and somebody cut his head, and Bobby was all bruised up and fractured from this fucking giant farm boy. And the whole time there's Ricky Morton laying on his back in the ring with one eye open, looking at it going, that's a hell of a fight.
You ain't lying. And I never forget the night, too, is in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Fans, and you're out there, I could tell. Me and Robert had our stuff and already in our bags. And I knew we was at that angle, God almighty. And we had a riot. And me and Robert, right when he came back through that door, I said, Robert, grab your wrestling bag. Let's go straight to the car. So I grabbed my wrestling bag, went straight to the car, and police come in and sent everybody in the dressing room for for inciting a riot. They even got early lad to sit over and cheer. They took him to jail too. And me and Robert were done gone, man.
What do you remember? You saved me and Dennis Condry's life in Houma, Louisiana, one night. Remember that old building where when you got in the locker rooms, it was basically a concrete block room with no way out. There was a little small window that a human being couldn't crawl out. So we had to go back out into the arena to go to the back door and leave. So they waited until the whole building was clear and there was no fans in the building. And then they sent us out, but the cops weren't smart either. And they didn't like the heels. So they didn't walk us to our car. So Bobby's riding with Dundee. Dennis is riding with me. As we're throwing our bags in the trunk of our car, here comes about 10 guys. And one of them has a full unopened can of beer, and he chucked it overhand at Dennis, and Dennis ducked it and put the prettiest Fujiwara armbar on that fucking guy I've ever seen, took him down and kicked him in the face. Well, that left 9 more, and I had a tennis racket in my hand, and me and Dennis, and all of a sudden, here come these bright headlights, and it was you and Hoot drove through the crowd, honking your horn and driving through the crowd, and they all dispersed, and we jumped in our car and fucking took off, or elsewise we would not be talking here today, I don't think.
I got you. You know what, Jimmy, and since you're talking about that, though, in riots, this is back when I worked for Nick Gillis, and people ask me many times about what, the worst ass whooping that I've ever got in the business. And this is at the time when Richard Pryor was real hot, and Terry Gordy. Matter of fact, I'm working with Terry Gordy and Michael Hayes later on that night. I'm standing back there. It's in the Gallatin. You had got but one hallway right there. That's both dressing rooms are there. And I don't know. And Terry was talking to Michael, and Terry let the N word out. Do you hear me? And that's not my vocabulary, but he let it out. Bobby Eaton's wrestling Gypsy Joe in the ring. And the next thing I know, there was 30 people fighting Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy. So I had to help them. You understand me? Now, Here we are, we're fighting. Michael Hayes he's trying to front face. So I said, don't let that son of a bitch go. God damn, we got, don't go off. And whatever you do, don't go off your feet. And all of a sudden I looked up, and it's like Bobby was walking on top of people. Coming back, next thing Bobby is in there fighting, and Gypsy Joe's fighting. And I'll never forget this. We're fighting, and I'm telling him, get through the door back down the dressing room. And look here. And we're fighting, and I'm right there beside Terry. I stepped through, and I grabbed Terry, and a guy kicked Terry Gordy in the ass. He goes, get your ass down there still. I never forget that. Buddy, what an ass whooping we got. And then look here. Then after that was over, we went back out and was in the main event. I wrestled in the main event after we done fought half the building. So
it was y'all guys' fault. We had that $6 million lawsuit in Beckley because we made that. I've told the story. We made the West Virginia law textbooks. A lawyer came to me and gave me the 6 pages photocopied because it was a textbook case because the building, it didn't have licensed bonded security and the whole 9 yards, and it got way beyond just a wrestling thing. But it was Beckley, had the Raleigh County Armory, had sold out, Rock and Roll Midnight, and you guys left the ring, and all the cops went with you guys because the girls were trying to tear your clothes off. So the cops went with you and left all of us standing in the ring. Now the people are surrounding the ring. We got no cops. We can't leave the ring. And somebody... Still to this day, that was the point of contention of what the lawsuit was about. Somebody throws that big 3-foot-long wooden owl marker, looked like a big wooden arrow, and hit Bobby in the side of the neck and cut him, and Stan dove out and nailed who he claimed. And many eyewitnesses supported this, but not all of them, was the guy that threw it. And he, one shot, crushed the guy's orbital socket, knocked him over 2 rows of chairs.
Yeah,
and there was a big lawsuit. But if you guys hadn't been so popular with all those females trying to tear your clothes off and have sex with you on the way back, but that's a lost
I like the comment you made one time. I was listening to some show, and you said Ricky and Robert got more women going to the ring than most people got in a lifetime.
Yeah.
What people ask me a lot of stories.
Art, though. It's a lost art, what you were talking about, that back in the old days when the heels would get too much heat, and the people would start hitting the ring, or they'd have the ring surrounded and the heels couldn't get out. And the Ox Baker clip on YouTube from Cleveland is a classic illustration of this. The baby faces would run back out and hop on the heels and fight them back to the locker room because the fans would back up since the baby faces were beating the heels up. They felt they didn't need to. And so you would get working beat up back to the locker room rather than the fans shooting, beating you up back to the locker room.
Oh, I got you, man. And, you know, I had a lot of fun in this business, Jimmy. Like you said, we was talking about early career. You know, I broke in with my dad. You knew my dad real good, Paul Morton. Man, spent a lot of time. You know, when a person and you're in this business and you spend a lot of time with your dad, times you won't remember. You know, my dad, he was a mean little fucker too. You hear me? In his day,
the bald eagle.
Yes, sir. And you know, and that's when I really smartened up to life. You know, when my dad passed away, Superman died, and then that's what really, I guess, brought me down to earth. And you'd be proud of me, Jimmy. You knew me throughout my years. Whatever they say about me, most of it, 99% of it's true. But I changed my whole life, and I didn't change it because I had to. I did it because I wanted to. I quit smoking. You know, I didn't think I went to bed for 35 years. So, but but the other thing, but you know, that was me. This is what I like doing. This is my business. The things I've done in my life, I'm not ashamed of it. Yes, you know, here I am, 20-something years old. I'm a rock star, don't know it. There's women. Well, you think I ran? Hell no, I had a good time. I'm not. I had one hell of a time, guys, and I enjoyed what I done. I enjoy this business. I'm one of the few still, I guess. And people still ask me, how come I still wrestle? Well, one thing, it's the only thing I know to do. I didn't make the millions of dollars. Plus, I got a divorce. My wife took everything I had. But I love what I do. I enjoy this business. I love the wrestling business. If people don't only stop and think and realize what our business is really about, you know, another thing I was going to tell you too, Jimmy, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, one of my best times. I love working for Bill Watts because that's where I got a break. But when you got through with all the hustle and bustle with NWA, then WCW with Jim Hurd, and you put up with crap and shit like that, you know, that when we gave our life to our business, why couldn't we have that job? You know, they bring some pizza guy in that Jesus Christ. I'm just thinking to myself, how fucking stupid, goofy are you? I mean, who hired you? I mean, what is this about? And then I went to the recipe for disaster in wrestling, just add suits. What's that?
The recipe for disaster in wrestling, just add suits. Anybody wears a suit gets involved in wrestling, there's disaster. But Smoky Mountain, we were trying to keep something alive.
But then I came there to Jimmy, and Smoky Mountain Wrestling was just, I mean, I loved it. You know what? The other day, my son called me back here because he has that WWE network, and they showed the Loser Lee Town match. Against the Heavy Bodies of Pikeville. Best finish ever in the business, I think.
Still to this day, I think, and I've been to there were 2,000 people jam-packed in that building. There wasn't 20,000. We've worked the Superdome, both of us, but there weren't more people there, but the reaction was louder and more genuine.
If anybody ever watched that finish,
it's the babies in the air. That's where I coined the phrase. They threw babies in the air. It was such a pop. It was such a pop.
And that was some of the greatest times. And, you know, I got to say this too. You know, when Dennis left the Midnight Express, you know, and Stan Lane coming to take Dennis's place, I got to say that Stan, remarkable. This is things that's hardly ever done. To have Stan Lane step right in there and took Dennis's place, and my hat's off. What a worker, and what a phenomenal athlete that him and what a team that Bobby and Stan made. Now, it did this like Dennis and Bobby. I'm not taking nothing away from Dennis. It's something I don't know. I don't know why Dennis left, and it's none of my business. If it's personal, it's none of my business. But Stan stepped in there, and I said this to Jimmy Del Rey when he was there. You know, then here
when he
Stan
took Stan's place in the Bodies,
Okay, now when the first time you introduced me to Jimmy Del Rey, here I go around this corner. Here's a red-headed, old potato-looking guy with one tooth gone. And he looks at me and said, "This is going to take Stan's place." I went, "Holy shit. Man, what are we going to do?" And then the first night, I got in the ring and I locked up with him. See, I can tell by that. I can just lock up with him. You can tell,
yeah. You can tell when
but I locked up with him, and boom, I went, son of a bitch, he took Stan's place. And I didn't think he'd do that. And I told Jimmy Del Rey that one time. I said, dude, that was he told me that was a great compliment to me. What you did, dude, he stepped right in there and did. And the same thing with Stan and Dennis. Jimmy Del Rey did it with Stan. They stepped in and took him up. And that's a good thing. That's good. That's good on your part. You knew what you were doing.
Well, and it was Kevin Sullivan recommended Jimmy. I knew him from working Florida a little bit, but never thought of him in that spot. But Kevin Sullivan said, "Brother, I got the guy. He could do any fucking thing." I can't do Kevin. Yeah. He'll be on the show next week. But that's something that's almost never done is a top main event tag team switching partners and not missing anything. And we were lucky enough to be able to pull it off a couple of times over the course of those runs. I'll tell you something, and I know you're going to remember this because one of the favorite things that we did in Smoky Mountain was, and this was in 1995, folks, when the internet may not have come along yet real heavy, but the sheets were out and Paul Lee was doing his stuff up in ECW. People were getting set on fire and things, and it was starting to head that way, the point of no return. But we did an angle in Johnson City and Freedom Hall where Al Snow gave you a pile driver, a leaping pile driver, and boy, that thing looked good. And boom, and of course the pile driver was illegal in Smoky Mountain Wrestling because if you don't have a devastating maneuver that you can make illegal, that you can ban, that the heel can then come back and do behind the referee's back and you shoot an angle, you got nothing. So the pile driver was always mine because it was illegal in Tennessee and it was devastating. And Owen Hart, one of the greatest workers of all time, actually accidentally did hurt Steve Austin and paralyze him, led to the beginning of the end of his career with a pile driver, so it can happen. But Al Snow pile drives Ricky Morton, and you laid there in that ring, and the match was over, and we stopped the show, and we called an ambulance, and the ambulance backed up into Freedom Hall, and they put you on the stretcher and the backboard and carried you out, and we have footage. This wasn't in 1975, folks. This was 1995 when everybody was supposed to be getting smart. Women were crying, tears rolling down their face. There was at least 15 or 20 guys out back of the arena that we had to send the police out to disperse that were waiting for Al Snow. And it was all because of the way that it was presented, the way it looked, and the way that it was sold. And it was treated seriously, and it wasn't part of the show. And this guy was hurt, and they loved you, and they wanted to kill Al Snow, and that was the reaction we were looking for. And that was pretty close to the modern era. It still can be done if you do it right.
Jimmy, it all can be done. And see, that's one thing. If it's done right. I forget the other day, after, when I came back and I had the match with Albin in a cage, and that's when Glenn, which is a Kane, Unabomber.
Yeah.
Remember we give it the fucking ring where he come up through the ring?
Yeah.
Remember that? First time that ever been done.
Well, no, I think I researched that I think that was another Kevin Sullivan. I researched that one from Florida, I think is where they did it. But still, I had so much confidence in it, I let them cut up one of my $400 canvases, and I didn't spend that kind of money just frivolously.
Oh, I know it. And he come up through there, and the people lost their mind. It was unbelievable.
Well, especially because remember the misdirection play was we had Barry Buchanan, Bull Buchanan. Nobody had seen him. We brought him up from Georgia, put him in the Kane outfit because he was same size as Glenn, and he was handcuffed to the ring post. So they thought, there's Kane right in front of us, and then suddenly Kane comes through the mat, and people are like, what the fuck is this?
I know it. Great shit, Jimmy. Great mind for our business.
Well, but you guys pulled it off.
Yeah, but I know that. I know, sometimes in this business you don't get along with people, and sometimes you do. I ain't said that every day was the 4th of July when I worked for you and when you worked for me. But I will say this right here, and this is really from my heart, so that you put this on record, everybody out there listen, because you won't hear it again. Jimmy Cornette, you're the best I ever met in the business. I mean, your mind, your set. I think WWE took a great loss when they lost you. I think Ring of Honor should get down on their knees and kiss your ass to bring you back.
Please
and
no.
Everything. Well, no, I know that you don't want a part of it because you done had enough of it.
Hey,
but if people would stop to listen. Go ahead.
Let me just say this also. I said it had entered wrestling lexicon, but I use it incessantly whenever I'm trying to tell a young guy how to sell or how to get himself over, or how to get sympathy, or how to get the match over. The phrase "selling like Ricky Morton" comes in. But more than that, if it hadn't been for you and Hoot, if it hadn't been for your team, if it hadn't been for you, the dogging our steps everywhere that we went over the course of our career, I wouldn't have made nearly as much money, I wouldn't be having this show today. I wouldn't have this name, for whatever that's worth, that I've built. If it hadn't been for the Rock and Roll Express, there wouldn't have been a Midnight Express. There wouldn't have been a Jim Cornette. So I want to thank you too for that, right, Ricky, because and just the fact that the longevity. I know that there's big cards taking place in Tokyo, Japan, and Madison Square Garden. And to be honest with you, at this stage of my life, I would have rather been at the Meigs County High School in Decatur, Tennessee this past Friday night than any of those places, just to get the chance to whack you one more time with a tennis racket.
Hey, and you did. But you know what, Jimmy? I feel the same way. I'm happy at what I do. And, you know, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to got to go pick my kid up from school here in a minute. But I just wanted to tell you, I enjoyed my time in this business. And if I had to do over again, I wouldn't change a thing. I like what I've done. I like who I am. I like all the things, the people that I know. Working with you was a great pleasure. And now I got that out of the way. You can kiss my ass. No, I'm just, no. But out there, hey, Jimmy, thank you for letting me plug my school. And guys out there,
wait a minute. Let me let you plug something else, because you have started. You're competition for me again. I can't get rid of the Rock and Roll Express. They're dogging my footsteps after 35 years. You've started a podcast, and I'm going to be doing that in a couple of weeks. How can we listen to or find your podcast?
Yeah, okay, right now, because I'm just starting to go on to School of Morton. It'll be on there. We're working on other things, Jimmy. I've told you I'm not the smartest guy in the world when it comes to this stuff. James, the guy that helps me with everything, he's taking care of that. But one thing he can do is he the one that
was on the Predator show, or you got a different guy now? I just want to know.
I'm going to tell him you said that. But it's great. But yeah, he's going to School of Morton. And what I was telling earlier, I gave a dive walkthrough. You even check it out, Jimmy. I worked hard on the place, and I started out with nothing. Still got nothing, but I do. I have a. But
it's a nice
great time. Yes, I do. No, I have a lot of guys here, and I try to teach them I try to say it ain't what you do, it's how you do it. And if you just learn that and learn the basics, man, it makes the business in your match so much easier. It's like I don't mind going on last. It's like the other night I don't know if you noticed, Jimmy. Because I usually do the suicide dive a lot too. And I told Sigma, they said, you got to do the dive. And I said, hell, every match done it. So that's one thing the young guys are going to tell you earlier that don't do. They don't go out and watch the match before them or the matches. Other night I watched. It's just like they go out there to do the same match, but they just different hot spots at different times.
They work the same body part, or they do the same cutoff or the same heat spot or whatever. That's what Dutch Mantell told Steve Austin when he first went to Memphis. Austin asked him for feedback his first week, and Dutch said, son, he was pretty much the shits. Go out there and pull you up a chair and watch every match from start to finish. And that's what I used to do when I was I was so thrilled to be in the business and get to see the matches in Memphis at the Coliseum from the back with the guys where I could hear them talking, that I'd be in the first or second match, and I would stay through to the main event, even though I had a 400-mile drive home, and I would watch that main event with Lawler and whoever and listen to the veterans that were back there watching it with me talk about that was good, that was bad, what did he do that for, look at that, and I'd see the people, and that's how you understand. If you watch the matches, not only do you not repeat yourself through the course of the night, but also you pick up shit that you can research and use other places, and the people think you invented it.
Yeah, and Jimmy, the same thing I used to do. I used to go out and watch the matches. The reason why I watched them is I would see how everybody worked. See, when you're a good babyface, and I've not said I was the best, but when you're a good babyface, you have to adjust yourself to the heel, because all heels got different gimmicks. All heel have different styles, and if a babyface can adjust himself to that way of working with that heel, you have a great match. Because, it's about some guys you don't have scissors. Some guys you don't, go running, diving through the ropes. Some guys, some heels, you just sell for them. And you have a great match with them. That's just the way I learn and do. But, Jimmy, thank you for having me on your show.
Every once in a while you dive through the ropes, and some heels, they might not be there when you land.
Yeah.
But anyway,
was I supposed to catch him?
Yeah. One time Bobby Fulton, Stan forgot the spot. Stan thought it was a variation instead of the spot we were going to do. He thought that Bobby was going to take a bump out, and then he was going to grab him and throw him on the rail. But instead, Bobby was going to dive out, and Stan would catch him, throw him on the rail. But Stan didn't get that information. Bobby dives. Stan ain't there. Bobby crashes head first to the floor, looks up, and had the look like, I thought we were friends. But anyway, Rick Morton, international sex symbol, has to go pick his kids up at school, so we are going to get off here. But once again, it's the School of Morton.
Hey, we will continue this podcast on my podcast, School of Morton. Y'all check it out.
On the School of Morton podcast in a couple of weeks, and you get School of Morton on Facebook. Just go there. Ricky's going to take over the podcasting world. I'm going to try to figure out how you can sell on the air. If anybody can, you can figure out a way to sell on audio.
Thank you, buddy.
And we thank you very much for being on the program. For our producer, Styles Bitchley, and my co-host, the great Brian Last, who got to ask one fucking question all day.
Boy, is it your lucky day.
And our special guest, Ricky Morton. I'm Jim Cornette. We'll see you next week on The Experience. Until then, so long for now.